Good afternoon, good morning, good evening to everybody who's listening to Radio W.O.R.K.S World. This is Louise K Shaw, known as the Body Whisperer, and I'm here to host a show with Marina Nani. Hello Marina, how are you?
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. Thank you for listening in, and thank you, Louise, for inviting us to be part of your journey. I'm so excited. And you know what? I can't wait. Actually, I can't wait to listen the story of the swan. So if at some point you could share that, I'll be so grateful. I'll be delighted. Over to you, Louise.
Thank you so much, Marina. And yeah, this is the story of the swan. And what I thought I wanted to do, because as a body whisperer, a lot of the work that I do is around whispering and listening to what's actually going on in people's bodies. So I thought what a really cool way of doing this would be to actually use the acronym WHISPER and actually break down some of the things that I work with when I work with my clients. So if we take the W, and that actually stands for the word whisper. And what I wanted to sort of impress upon the listeners here, it's all about listening to our bodies. It's listening to the language, the unique language that our bodies have. Because it's very much like learning a language when you went to school. When you went to school, you learnt words, you put them together in a sentence, and then it was the actual tonality, the way that you said those words, that actually gave the meaning to that sentence. And it's very much the same sort of approach when you look at whispering. And what it is, you start looking at each of your organs. Each organ has a specific role that it's playing in your body. Then when you have each of the organs together, put together, they actually have a purpose. But then the actual health of that organ and the health of the joining up of those organs actually tells a very different story. It tells what's going on, and it's very much like the tonality of the sentence. So, for example, if you were to say, "Can you go and open that door for me?" in a very calm, collected way, you would be receiving that in a completely different way to if I was saying it in a very angry tone. And the very same thing happens with the organs. The organs are always communicating with us, and it's our job to start listening. Now, also with whispering, it's actually to start getting in touch with your whole body and what is making up your body. So, for example, we are all aware that we have a brain, but how many people are actually aware that we actually have a gut brain and we have a heart brain as well? And each of those brains are actually going to be doing very different things, and they're going to be communicating with us in a very different way. And although, you know, we don't have time on the call today, but if anybody wants to start getting a better understanding of particularly the heart Math Institute has actually done some really incredible research around the power of our hearts. So that would be a really good place to go and get some more information on that. Now, the other aspect is we have two minds. Now, most people understand the concept of a conscious mind and a subconscious mind. But how many people actually really do understand what those two minds are doing for us? And one of the biggest pieces of work that I do is actually start understanding what our conscious mind is saying versus what our subconscious mind is saying. So I just wanted to take a moment here to just perhaps take a breath. Is there anything you want to say up to that point, Marina?
Yes.
Is there anything that you would like to add at that point?
Yes, I would like to add that you are absolutely amazing. Please don't stop.
Okay, thank you. So when we look at the conscious mind is actually that part of us that's sort of setting goals, and it's actually judging how we're doing against things. And the conscious mind is very much able to think very abstractly. So when it thinks happiness or joy, happiness and joy means so many different things to so many different people. It's a very subjective phrase. The conscious mind also is very much works very much in the past and in the future. It's not really in the present. And the other thing to remember about the conscious mind is it can't hang on to a lot of information, and it can't process a lot of information. So in actual fact, the conscious mind is only able to process about 40 bits of information per second. Now, when you actually contrast this to the subconscious mind is that part of us is actually responsible for the habitual stuff that we do. So it's the subconscious mind that will be enabling us to breathe. It will be beating our heart. It will be using our digestive system. And it's actually it's the part of the mind that will actually, it takes care of all those learned body movements that we do, and it's our habitual behavior. And the other thing to remember about the subconscious mind, it's very much like the gatekeeper to the conscious mind, because the subconscious can actually take in 4 billion bits of information per second, which is significantly different to the conscious mind. So it's a bit like a gatekeeper, otherwise the conscious mind will get overwhelmed. But the difference with the subconscious is it's very much a literal. It can't be subjective. And the other thing to notice about it also, it doesn't recognize negatives. So, for example, if you were to say, you know, if you were looking to change your weight and you were looking to lose weight, if you were to say, I don't want to eat this, your subconscious mind will translate it as, I want to eat it, because it won't recognize the negative. And what's really key also with this mind is, like I said earlier, it actually looks after everything that is on autopilot. And the key here is, up until the age of 6, from 0 to 6, we are downloading programs on a daily basis, on almost like a second basis, because that's the way that our minds will be working. Our minds will be downloading everything around us. Now, if you're in an environment where you're getting programs and beliefs and attitudes and behaviors that are destructive for you, your mind will already be programming that, and it will be holding on to it, and it will be habitually replaying those, because that's what it has to do until you tell it to do something else. So why is this really, really important to understand? If you have an analogy of the conscious mind being like the mouse and a subconscious mind being like the elephant, if the mouse is sitting on the elephant and the mouse wants to move forward, if the elephant doesn't want to go forward with the mouse, it's not going to go forward. And there's very little chance a mouse sitting on top of an elephant is going to make that elephant go forward unless he wants to do it. So in the very same way, if your conscious mind wants you to go to the gym, for example, but your subconscious mind has a belief or a program that is stopping that, it's the subconscious mind that will actually win. So the real essence to the work that we do is actually getting both your minds going in the same direction.
Wow. I remember that back in school we were studying Freud, and I can't remember exact words, but it was the idea that your mind, your conscious mind, is like a fountain, which is playing the water in the sun and falling back into the place where it's coming from, underneath, the ground.
Yeah.
And that pool, which is underground from where the water is coming out, is where everything is rising from. So the subconscious is the source, the spring, the pool of your conscious mind. And I absolutely love what you said, the comparison you made just now, put a big smile on my face because it's so visual. I couldn't see it. I couldn't see the elephant in my room. So it's all about with your.
Marina, I'm finding it so difficult to hear you. I'm sorry. I don't know whether that's your end or.
Oh, no, you carry on.
Okay. So what I think was really important to understand also here is the fact that our minds can be changed. And Dr. Bruce Lipton wrote a book several years ago called The Biology of Belief, and you can actually go on YouTube to actually look at that as well. And it's a fascinating body of work that he started doing as well, and that was all about, you know, we have this belief that what we're born with is what we have, and that's what we're going to end up with, and there's no way of changing it. Well, science is actually proving that wrong now, that actually that's a belief that's not true. Because even down to the DNA level, Dr. Bruce Lipton's work has actually shown that our environment is very key to changing our genes. And so there's a huge body of work around that, and I think it's also a gentleman called Carl Dawson He was an EFT founding master, and he actually extended his work to matrix re-imprinting, and that's really where we go back into past memories, and we literally change the perception. We change the perception around that event, so that it no longer is limiting us or damaging us, and taking it forward. So those are sort of some really key elements to that. So if we move forward to H, and that's very much around health. And one of the things which I wanted to impress here was very much the fact that our medical model is actually based around Newton, and what Newton actually found, but 300 years ago. And what's really important here is the fact that our modern medicine model is still really being taught around those principles. And I guess a lot of this is also that the Western approach is very much, if something's happening to you, there's something going wrong in your body. You know, you've had something happen to you, something's created, and it's actually caused an awful lot of fear around illnesses, and a belief, you know, the whole belief that something's happened to me, I must have done something wrong, etc. And the other thing to note here is very much that the Western approach is about treating the symptoms of something, and normally that gets treated with drugs or surgery. And I've got obviously very first-hand experience of that. So when I was in the States and I couldn't walk, I wasn't really given any other option but to have the disc removed from my back. So you know, I don't ever remember anybody saying that let's have a look and see why this was actually happening. All they wanted to do was cut out the disc in my back to stop the pain. And the other thing which I've noted over the last couple of years is how many of the websites on health talk about, if they show a disease or an illness, they actually say that the causes are known, and more worryingly, they say that quite often the cure is unknown. So that sort of leaves you in a sort of like a, you know, the controls, you have no control over anything, because we don't know why it's happening to you and we don't know how to get rid of it. So you're left in this sort of like fear situation that something, you know, that your body's let you down and you've got no way of getting out of it. But when you contrast that with the Eastern medicine, they're very much more about looking at prevention, and they also look at what the cause is. I mentioned the other day that Dr. Riker in the 1980s started investigating this sort of body of work, and he started to refer to it as German New Medicine. So again, if people want to look into this in more detail, I'd encourage them to look at that site. But what basically from his work, he actually identified that there were two phases of disease. You've got the stress phase, which is sort of easily to remember by the fight or flight. You know, you're going to fight your way out of a situation, or you're going to get away from a situation, and that's known as the sympathetic stage. And then you have the regeneration phase, which is very much the rest and repair, and that's known as the parasympathetic stage. And again, to sort of give you a little analogy of how this works, if you imagine a rabbit going about its own business, you know, in a field, and it's perfectly happy, and it looks around, and then all of a sudden it sees a fox. Well, the moment it sees that fox, it's going to freeze. You know, it's automatically going to want to run away. So that's the flight. So it's already got the stress in its body, because the stress has enabled it to just run and get out of there. Now, if it goes down into a rabbit hole, as soon as it gets into the rabbit hole and it feels that it's safe, the rabbit's actually going to start shaking, because what that does, it actually starts to re-regulate its body. And it regulates its body to get it back into a parasympathetic state, into a rest and repair. And then what it's going to do, it's going to sit there and it's going to start getting its heartbeat back to normal, it's going to get its breathing back to normal, everything in its body will start to get back to normal, and then it will carry on its day. But you see, what happens with humans is that we don't shake our stresses off. We don't tend to do that. And quite often, you know, if you see somebody by the side of the road who's been in an accident, if they're shaking, normally our first reaction is to say to them, "Oh, don't worry, stop shaking." But in actual fact, the shaking is an important part to just get our body back regulated. And you see, what the work that Dr. Hammer did was he traced every disease back to a significant emotional event which caused a conflict with somebody. So what actually happens there is when you have a significant event that the subconscious mind hasn't been able to resolve, you get stuck in either the stress phase or the regeneration phase. And it's by being stuck in one of those two areas that causes the conflict in your body, which then causes the disease, the dis-ease. And if you sort of liken this to, if I was to ask you to think about what you were doing on, I don't know, 3rd of May 2003, how many people would actually be able to go, oh yeah, I was doing this, this and this? Because unless there was an actual significant event on that date, you probably wouldn't remember anything about that day. And a significant event could be like a wedding or a birthday or something. But you see, the point is, you'll only remember it if it was a significant event. And contrastly, if I was to say to you, write down the 10 things that you remember the most that had a negative impact on you in your life, you'd probably be able to reel them all off, and you'd probably be able to reel the date that it happened, or roughly the date, and the impact it's had on you. And that's what we mean about, if there's energy around an event, you'll remember it. And that was the basis of the body of the work that Dr. Hammer's done. So that's really the important piece to take out of there is, you know, our bodies are massively intelligent organisms. They are not doing anything without a good reason. So, you know, it's time to stop believing that something's happening to us for no good reason, because there is a reason. And all your body's trying to do by creating the symptoms is to get you back into a regulated state, to get you back into balance. And I think when you start to see everything like that, it starts to take the fear away from what's actually happening in your body. And it starts to put you back into control, rather than it being, you know, the only way you can be better is by something outside of you getting you better. So that's the H. Marina, did you want to add anything to that? Marina? No. Okay, I'm going to go on. So, with I've called this as integrative, and the World Health Organization has a really wonderful quote on their website, and it's actually, health isn't just the absence of disease, it's the balance of all elements within our lives. So when we are conscious of all the elements that comprise our well-being, then that's what you have in my book, and what I'm keen to get the people I work with, it's true health. So when you can get to a point of true health, then you do have everything. And I know there's a saying that without your health, you have no wealth. And I would say, yeah, that's probably true. But most people tend to think of wealth as financial. But in actual fact, if you look at it more broadly, wealth is a wealth in your career, a wealth in your relationships, a wealth in your purpose. It's all encompassing. And I actually use a model of well-being where I get my clients to start thinking about all the areas that comprise their life. Now, the model that I use, it can be slightly different depending on who you are, but typically I look at the psychological elements within your life. You know, what's your mind? What's going on in your mind? What's your mindset like? I look at social. So, you know, that's relationships, but that's also about your connection with community. It's about what are you doing to, you know, to give yourself a buzz, you know, all the social elements of your life. Then there's the physical, and that's, you know, that's quite obviously, that's about your health, you know, your actual state of being in terms of your physical body. Then I get people to look at their spiritual element. So it's all about everything that spiritual means to them. And again, that's quite a subjective term. It means different things to different people. And then the financial. And then looking at all those areas within the context of your environment. because it's all very well having all that really, really great, but if you're in a toxic environment, it's going to damage all the work that you've been doing on all the other areas. So I get people to look at that, and the model of well-being is really quite important. So, you know, for example, we talk to quite a few people who have a brilliant career, but they're looking for the love of their life. Or you've got people who've got a brilliant career, they've got the family of their dreams, but they're suffering from health issues, and so that's causing them distress. So when the World Health Organization says everything is in balance, you know, it's so important to get everything in balance. And I think quite often we're told or given this impression that you can't have it all. But I think the new paradigm in health is really about, yes, you can have it all, and in actual fact, it's really important to have it all, that all your elements are working together. So that's the I. So moving now on to S. I use this as the word secrets, and this is really, I never really knew any of this until I started on my journey. I was never aware of any of this this sort of information, and I think it's really important to start opening our minds about what we have been told is true. So, you know, the universe has many secrets, and I guess over the years, without sort of putting the blame on any particular thing, but over the years, all these secrets have actually been, they've either been hidden by religious organizations or powerful families through the dynasties, whatever it will be. But, you know, as far back as the Egyptians, they understood the connection between what they referred to as the gods and our human existence. They built the pyramids on precise grids because they understood that there was a connection between the earth and the universe, I guess. And when they built their temples, they built them so specifically that, you know, when I went to Egypt, I was just amazed at seeing these temples that had the sun coming into the temples at a very precise time in the day, because, you know, they honored the sun. You know, they honored Ra, the sun god, and they didn't do anything unless they first understood what the connection was with nature and the stars, etc. But the point is, you don't need to go to Egypt to see this, because if you go around most of the cities around the world, most of the really predominant and prominent buildings are all built on plots of land which are very specific to the greater scheme of things. The other thing to look at is sacred geometry, and again, this is only something I've learned about or started to investigate since my start of my journey. And with sacred geometry, there's the concept that everything in the universe has a divine order. And when you start to notice this, it's everywhere around you. You know, everything is created out of geometric codes. A snowflake, the cornea in your eye, the molecules in your DNA, pine cones, the petals of a flower, honeycombs, everything. And you see, what was really, really beautiful is the fact that the ancients believed that having an understanding of sacred geometry was absolutely essential for the education of the soul, which I think is just so beautiful. But we've lost that over time. And, you know, even over like 2,500 years ago, we were taught in the Greek mystery schools that there are 5 perfect forms, which, known collectively, they're the Platonic solids, but they're the foundation of absolutely everything in the physical world. And, you know, what I find is really interesting is the fact that this idea was actually ridiculed until 1980. And it was when Professor Robert Moon at the University of Chicago, he demonstrated that the entire periodic table of elements is based on these 5 forms. And what that means is that's literally everything in our physical world. So under S, the secrets, it's all about a mindset change. It's about starting to investigate things outside of what you were brought up to believe, to start being curious about things and to question your thoughts. Now, we've already talked a little bit about our beliefs, our strong beliefs. You know, who instilled your beliefs inside you? Where did they come from? Were they from experiences, or were they from, you know, handed down from generation to generation? And things like, you know, money doesn't grow on trees, or you know, I'm too young to do this, or I'm too old to do that, or I'm not pretty enough to do this, or I don't have an education, or I didn't come from a good background. Those are all beliefs, and beliefs can be changed. So I was looking out the window actually today before it started to rain, and I was looking at my garden, and I was thinking about this interview, and I was just thinking, I wonder how I could bring something from the outside in. And I guess what I wanted to share was, I love this time of year when I look at my garden, because all I do is I start visualizing how I want my garden to look like in the summer. And when I look around the garden, I start to think, right, okay, well, if I want it to look like this, I know I've got to go around taking the things that aren't going to support that vision out of the garden. And equally, I've got to start planting things in there that are going to support that vision of what I want the garden to look like in summer. And I guess our minds are the same sort of thing. You know, if you don't have a garden, envisage one. But, you know, what are you doing if you consider your life like a garden? What are you doing to plant and make that garden look beautiful and exactly how you want it? And also, what are you taking out that no longer serves you, that no longer serves the vision of what you're actually trying to achieve? Because quite often what we do is we look at all the rubbish in our garden and we keep our minds on all that rubbish, and we don't give ourselves the space or the time to go out and get the nice stuff and put it in. So, like I say, if you don't have a garden, that's fine, just create one. And I guess this is where the whole concept of vision boards came in. You know, start thinking about what you want in your life. Start thinking about how things are going to start looking, and get pictures. Or if you're not a visual person, do it some other way. I know somebody has done a singing board, I guess you'd call it, where they sing little songs to themselves about all the things that they want. Whatever you need, just create it. But I think that the important thing under secrets is the fact that we brought into a bit of a lie that we're all separate. And I think when you start to realize that we're not separate, everything has such a huge connection. Everything in the universe is connected. When you really truly understand this at a soul level, then it really becomes impossible for you to speak ill of others. You know, it starts to get to that point where how can you kill an animal who's sharing this planet with us? Because we're connected with that animal. So surely if you're killing all these animals, you're killing a part of yourself. And then, you know, how is it that we can't look after our planet? Because if we're all connected, throwing litter down or pulling down trees needlessly because of commercial gain, or polluting our water and not being careful about our water consumption, all these things are actually going to be connected. They're all going to have an impact on us all. So every action we take is to understand that it's actually got an equal reaction elsewhere. And you see, when you see that everything is created with an absolute precision, unity and a wholeness, as can be seen when you start looking at sacred geometry, you know, it provides us with that understanding to abolish that false notion that we're all separate from nature and from each other. And if we're not separate, well, we can't be alone. And I think when you start looking at the massive increase in the amount of people suffering from depression, and I know first-hand experience because I suffered with it without knowing about it for over 15 years. And I remember back to my state of mind in that time, and I always felt that I was alone. I always felt that I was separate from everybody else. And what I realized is I had actually lost connection with my family, my friends, but the most important thing that I'd lost connection with was my connection with myself and how I fitted into the bigger scheme of things. You know, I was separate from everything. I was separate from, well, my higher self, which I now thankfully have got that connection back. So that, I guess, is what I would say under S for secrets. So then moving on to P for purpose. Yeah, this has been popularized over recent years about, you know, in the self-development circles, and it's all about, you know, people have always been talking about what's my purpose, you know, what am I here for? And, you know, I used to be saying that as well. It's like, what am I supposed to be doing with my life? You know, I can't believe that I'm just supposed to be here just doing what I'm doing. But then, you know, I noticed that I was actually asking the very same questions. I kept on seeking my purpose on the outside. I kept on seeking the answer in my job, or the way that I was within my family, or my social life, or my attitude to health. And essentially what I was doing was I was always seeking the answers outside. And I even used to think, you know, when I got married, or I had a family and I had a great career, then I'll be happy, then that will be my purpose. You know, that I'll found it, whatever it was actually. But then I changed to trying to figure out, well, actually, it's not out there, it's in here. I was really looking in the wrong place, because my purpose is inside me. My purpose is about my relationship with me and my creator. And, you know, the creator is actually me, because I create my own reality. So in its own definition, I am my own creator. So my purpose is to create from authenticity. You know, it's to be from that place of complete truth, not being what other people think I should be, or doing what other people think I should be doing. And only when you're coming from this place can you actually possibly understand and connect with your real purpose. And, you know, I no longer seek it from the outside, because I know it's not out there anymore. And it's taken a while, but I've recognized that my purpose is to be love. My purpose is to be joy. My purpose is to be compassion. My purpose is to have humility. And the biggest thing is just like, my purpose is to be me. But you know what? It doesn't actually matter if you're a school teacher, a financial analyst, a chef, a driver, a cleaner, or a CEO. Because when you are being that, whatever that is, with total authenticity, that's your purpose. That's my belief anyway. And you know what? Here's a beautiful thing which I've recognized. You know when you're living your purpose, because you will feel all of those emotions, because you'll feel love, joy, compassion, and humility. And I guess we get drawn in and sucked in so much to the advertising world, where we have images thrown down our throats on a regular basis, basically saying, you know, without this watch, this bag, or this car, or this holiday, you're not successful, or you're not going to be valued, or you're not going to be liked. You know, and if you're not this size and you're not wearing those clothes, nobody's going to like you or love you. And, you know, they want us to believe that, because let's face it, we all know that it's a money-making machine. But at the end of the day, you know, you can find fulfillment, you can find your purpose by just walking down the river and just being at peace with yourself. But obviously, you know, that doesn't make money for anybody. So call me a little bit of a cynic, but that's what I believe. But at the end of the day, you know, don't get me wrong. I mean, you know, it's just about being consciously aware. And the thing is, I mean, it's not about saying stopping everything, because, you know, I love snowboarding. I love snowboarding because I love being out on the mountains. I love being out there in the open. I love being in nature. I don't snowboard because it's a hip thing to be doing, or I don't buy new boards every year because I have to be seen to be in with the in crowd. The most important thing for me is to go snowboarding, because it gives me a sense of freedom, and it gives me a sense of being in nature and just doing something which is just so different to what I do in my day-to-day life. So I'm not saying go out there and stop doing all these things or consuming things, but it's being a conscious consumer, rather than you consuming because you're being told you have to do it in order to feel something or to be something, because then that's the wrong place to be. So then we move on to E, which is energy. And I'd like to start this section really with a brilliant quote by Albert Einstein. And Einstein said, "Everything is energy, and that's all there is to it. Match the frequency of the reality you want, and you cannot help but get that reality. It can be no other way. This is not philosophy, this is physics." So what I love about that is the fact that everything is energy. Everything. The books we read, the TVs we watch, the trees in the field, everything is an energy. And just because we can't see it like that doesn't mean to say it's not true. But the most important element is the fact that we are energy. And you know what is really interesting is the fact that the ancients knew this for centuries. You know, they knew that you could see the entirety of the universe within ourselves, but along the way, again, we just sort of forgot that, or it got taken away from us. I don't really know, but when you think about the fact that we have countless energy bodies within us, you've got the chakra systems, you've got the meridian systems, you've got the nadis, and then you've got the energy bodies that are surrounding your physical bodies. You know, that's a lot of energy going around, and it's only recently, I think, that people are really starting to understand this concept. But, you know, moving the energy within the physical and the ethereal bodies, that's been the cornerstone of Eastern medicine for centuries, and it's only now, really, that the Western world is catching up with that. And you can see the evidence of this because there's much more acceptance of acupuncture, of Reiki, of clearing, chakra clearing, and more recently with Gary Craig's introduction of emotional freedom technique. These are all focused on releasing blockages in our energy fields and our energy lines. And you know, again, the ancients knew that all disease comes from a blockage in our energy lines, and it's therefore the art of healing is to actually clear the block and to clear whatever caused that block. So, you know, when we're traumatized, whether that's actually from what we call a big T, which could be anything ranging from like a car crash or a sudden death or abuse, to a little T, which is just, you know, it's something that has had an impact, but it's not one of those big things. The energy of that trauma stays in our bodies. And a really, really brilliant book was by a guy called Dr. Robert Scare, and that's S-C-A-E-R. And Dr. Scare actually did a lot of work, and has done an awful lot of work about his book was actually called The Body Bears the Burden. So he's talking very much about the fact that whenever we're traumatized, it stays within our body. And, you know, that's the fundamental of a lot of the energy work that I've been doing. When the trauma is locked into your bodies, you know, the only way that you can release that is to engage with your body and to establish where in the body that trauma has been held, and then help the body to release it. And I was thinking about a phrase, actually, that I remember being said when I was at school. I used to get bullied an awful lot, and I used to go home, and my mum used to say this line over and over again, and it was like, sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me. And I never believed that, because I thought, no, I'm sorry, but the words are hurting. But actually, now that I'm doing the work that I'm doing, it's so key that this was one of the lies that we were told, because words do hurt, because words are so powerful, because they have an energy behind them. And they're also very, very powerful because they form thoughts. And if your words are forming thoughts, your thoughts create your reality. So of course, words are really powerful, because the words are ultimately going to create your own reality. And I think when I was thinking about this as well the other day, there's an entry in the Bible under Matthew 8:13, and it states, "And Jesus said to the centurion, 'Go, it shall be done for you as you have believed.' And the servant was healed in that very moment." Well, it was healed because he believed it, and it happened because he believed it, and so it was manifested. And I think that's one of the most key things that we've never really taught that at school. And the important element here is to be the observer of your thoughts. You know, what are your predominant thoughts? You may like to have a career or to find a significant other, and that's what your conscious mind is saying. But what are you saying in your subconscious mind? What are the thoughts going on in the background? You know, if you're saying, I really want this career, but there's a little voice on your shoulder that says, you'll never get that, or you don't deserve that, or Who do you think you are? Forgetting that. That's the predominant energy. That's the one that's going to be driving the boat. That's the elephant. You know, I want the career as the mouse. So it's really important to start recognizing what are you saying to yourself on a day-to-day basis. And it's all very well, you can go and do an hour's meditation or however long you do, but you've got another 23 hours, assuming you're, well, of course you're going to be asleep, but you're going to have a significant amount of your day is actually going to be saying thoughts to yourself over and over again. And it's to start being consciously aware of what you're saying. You know, when you're walking down the street between, you know, if you get off a tube and you go to work, what are the thoughts that you're saying to yourself? Start noticing that. What I get my clients to do is start journaling, and start journaling as soon as they get up in the morning, because those thoughts, if they're all negative, that's going to form the basis of your day. So when you can start being consciously aware of what your predominant thoughts are, you can start making changes to them. So the next part, the end, is the R for relationships. And what I was thinking about this, there's been an awful lot of talk over the last couple of years about relationship capital. And particularly in the business circles, you know, it's very much about that element of building relationships with your customers and clients. Much in the same ways that we would actually do if we were building relationships in life. But we, you know, people want to be with people who are like them or have similar values to themselves. And in business, it's, you know, it's the same sort of thing. People do business with people because they have a commonality with them. So I was thinking about that the other day, and I was thinking, but that again is very external. It's again driving our attention to an external relationship. And I think one of the number one people or person that a relationship should be formed with is ourselves. And I look at this because there's such an epidemic of self-loathing in our world. And you can see this because, I mean, look at what's going on around the world, the way that we're treating each other, what's happening in the news, and more upsettingly, if that's a word, is the number of suicides that are happening. You know, that's increasing on a dramatic basis. And I just think loving yourself is so paramount to a life of health and ultimately a wealthy life. And I'm, again, not just referring to financial wealth. One of the things, I read a quote the other day by Marcel Proust, who actually said, "The real journey of discovery consists not in seeking new lands, but seeing with new eyes." And that really resonated with me, because when I decided that I couldn't stand my life in England any longer, and I jumped on a plane and flew to Los Angeles, I thought at the time that all my rubbish would be left in London. I thought all my troubles, everything that was going wrong in my life, was going to stay miraculously in London. Well, little did I know that the biggest problem was going with me, and that was me. But you know, I didn't need to travel the other side of the world to heal myself. I only had to look in the mirror and start with that person. And just above my computer in my office, I've got a really poignant postcard that a really lovely friend sent to me. And on the postcard it actually says, "Yesterday I was clever, so I wanted to change the world. Today I am wise, so I'm changing myself." And this is so important, because only when we're prepared to take responsibility for our own life, our own reality, and our own thoughts will our relationship with the world change. And, you know, just before I left the States, I met a man who said something to me that at the time I didn't really understand the significance of it. He said to me, "It's about time you recognize that you're a swan, and it's time you got out of the duck pond and started swimming." Now, this has so many meanings for me now, but the one that I would like to offer for the listeners is this. We all have a path to follow in this lifetime, and the moment we decide to be true to ourselves and stop trying to be something we are not is the moment that our whole being opens up and we start to live with grace and poise. So that, Marina, is the whisper strategy, I guess, the whisper philosophy that I've been applying to my work. Over to you, Marina.
Wow, Louise. Wow, Louise. You know, I have to say this. You are the master gardener of the soul. You are not only the producer, the architect, the designer of your own life, but you are the inspiration for many, many people who are seeking something and they don't know they are seeking for. So many people out there who are chasing all these external goals into the outside world, and little they know they have it all already. And like you said, we don't live on a garden like Eden, and life is full of struggles and difficult experiences, and sometimes it's so sad when you look at what's happening around us. But if you start with you, if you start with what's happening inside you, then we have hope, and the time we borrow on this planet could be passed on to the next generation, knowing that we start looking at the world with a fresh pair of eyes. Thank you so much. I'm so humbled that you shared so much and you gave so much, and I know it's just the beginning, and I can't wait for our next episode. I'm not quite sure what is going to be, the topic is going to be, but I'm waiting with bated breath. Over to you, Louise.
Marina, thank you so much for your kind words. It's been an absolute pleasure to share this with you. And I think one of the last things I'd leave with the listeners is I heard Tony Robbins say many, many, many years ago, and a statement which, again, at the time I never really understood it, but it's so poignant to me now. And that was, all you need is within you now. And that's it. And heaven, you know, heaven is here. We create our own heaven. Heaven can be on earth, and we can just jump into it at any time we want to. We just have to make that decision to do that. So thank you to all the listeners today listening to Radio W.O.R.K.S World with the beautiful Marina Malney and the Body Whisperer. Thank you so much.
Until next time, start whispering. Thank you. Goodbye.
Goodbye.